Okay, so recently there's been you can call it a crisis or an emergency at our southern border, which has just been recently happening. So, again, today you said is March 27th, 2021. So the Lord had me start gathering some of the truths that are being spoken, because, again, in the midst of all this, there's a whole lot of stuff that's not true that's being spoken as truth. And to gather this so that we will have understanding of what's going on. So during a 2019 Democratic presidential primary debate, President Biden said that the United States is a country that tells people struggling under oppression or poor conditions, you should come, as he argued for a more open asylum policy. They deserve to be heard, that's who we are, Biden said. Okay, so that's when he was running for president in 2019 and then won the election in 2020. This year, as Republicans blame Biden's campaign rhetoric and policies for the situation at the border, the president has shifted and is telling migrants that they should stay in their home countries as he aims to let them apply for asylum where they are. I can say quite clearly, don't come over, Biden said. So don't leave your town or city or community. We're going to make sure we have facilities in those cities and towns run by Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and also with the Human Health Services, HHS, to say you can apply for asylum from where you are right now. Biden and his administration have noted that there were significant migrant surges under the Trump administration as well. This is now a parentheses section. Last summer, the number of migrant encounters at the U.S.-Mexico border began to rise after having dropped when the pandemic gripped the Western Hemisphere. Federal border officials began to warn about a projected increase in the coming months. When COVID hit, we saw a drop in the numbers, but we knew from the beginning that at some point those numbers would creep up, said former Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, Commissioner Mark Morgan, citing the worsening conditions in Latin America as a result of the pandemic and hurricane devastation. Okay, so this was happening before Biden took office. This was happening last summer. A White House spokesperson also said that push forces, including violence, economic hardships, corruption, plus 2 hurricanes and a global pandemic, are driving people in Central America to the United States. So these people are coming from Central America. Biden does not believe migrants are coming because he was elected president, but the first 2 months of 2021 have seen more border encounters by CBP than in corresponding months of any of the past 3 years. Many migrants are saying they decided to come to the United States because Biden was elected president. One migrant said he definitely would not have come if former President Trump was still in office. After being asked if he came to the U.S. because Biden was elected, the migrant said basically, while also emphasizing the violence in his country. Another migrant said that migrants are tuning out Biden's newer pleas to stay away partially because of the dangerous conditions in Central America. So now they find it as an opportunity to come, since Trump is no longer
he's welcoming him, not pushing him back. Even though he's
Biden is welcoming.
Yeah, but he's saying to not come now.
Well, because there's so many coming right now,
we're not set up for it yet.
Yeah, the Biden administration has not set up for it yet. So the migrants, just to recap, are you coming because Biden is president? Basically, but they're also escaping the violence in their country, and then I think this other one here will explain it too. So again, another migrant said that migrants are tuning out Biden's newer pleas to stay away partially because of the dangerous conditions in Central America. So now it's like they waited until Trump was out of office, and now that Biden was now that Biden won the election and was sworn in, now they're like, now's the time we go to America. Migrants say they are not listening to Biden's message telling them not to come yet because the border isn't ready to receive them all. The migrants said, look, if you guys lived in our country, you would know that it's really tough, citing violence and killing in his hometown. It's not going to stop ever, he added on the migrant surge. So Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said, what we are seeing is a result of President Trump's dismantlement of the safe and orderly immigration processes that were built over many, many years by presidents of both parties. That's what we are seeing, and that's why it's taking time for us to execute our plans to administer the humanitarian claims of vulnerable children. That's what this is about. The Biden administration is on track to open at least 6 emergency facilities to house migrant children streaming into the U.S., but it may not be enough because migrants keep showing up at the border. More than 16,000 migrant children are currently in U.S. custody, with 5,000 of those in the hands of Border Patrol, which is encountering about 530 unaccompanied minors every day. So 530 unaccompanied minors are coming every day. These reports were gathered a few days ago too, so these numbers may have changed. CBS News met a Guatemalan family crossing the border with 16-year-old Isabel, who they are helping make the journey. Isabel was without her parents and said they were sick, and she's hoping to work in the U.S. to support them. Without a parent or legal guardian, Isabel may be the only one in her group allowed to stay in the U.S. and make her case after being intercepted by Border Patrol agents. The Biden administration is now directing shelters to fast-track the release of unaccompanied minors with a parent or a guardian in the U.S. who can care for them. So apparently a lot of these kids are coming here because there's someone of their family or relatives already here. So they're coming here now to get to them. Mm-hmm. And the Biden administration is now trying to find a way to fast track these kids to their family and relatives wherever they are in the U.S. Right. Mexico says it has stepped up immigration enforcement along its southern border with Guatemala as U.S. officials visit the region to explore ways to reduce the flow of migrants. Okay, so Mexico down at their southern border with Guatemala, they're stepping up all their immigration enforcement because they're really not, well, they are coming from Mexico, but there's 2 parts to this, and this will explain it, but to have understanding of this part right here from what I've read. A whole bunch of them are coming from Central America, then making their way through Mexico to get here. And others from the Trump administration were turned back and dropped off or sent to Mexico. They've been now waiting in Mexico until Trump was out of office. Right. And the new president, Biden, came in, so now they can attempt to come back again. Right. So since last summer, many of these have been waiting in Mexico for this opportunity in this moment. So they're coming. These are Central America people coming that have been waiting in Mexico, and then more Central Americans coming through Mexico to the United States because of the conditions in their country. Hundreds of migrant children still separated from their parents by the Trump administration may be allowed to reunite with their families in the U.S., and some families may have the opportunity to stay, HSS Mayorkas announced on March 1st. Reuniting the families is one of the Biden administration top priorities, described as a moral imperative. Yeah. During former President Trump's time in office, more than 5,500 migrant children were separated from their parents when they entered the country. and more than 1,400 parents were ultimately deported without their children. We are hoping to reunite the families either here or in the country of origin, Mayorkas said. And if in fact they seek to reunite here in the United States, we will explore lawful pathways for them to remain in the U.S. and to address the family's needs. So we are acting as restoratively as possible, he said. Biden officials say they expected the number of migrants arriving at the U.S. border will swell once they took office, given their drastically different approach to immigration compared to former President Trump's. But they did not anticipate a surge this big. The Biden administration is trying their best to uphold the rule of law with humanity. They have a ton of work ahead to clean up the mess Trump left them, but their intentions are true, Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut, added. Biden officials and congressional Democrats have attempted to deflect blame. A less than cooperative transition from the Trump administration, pent-up demand stemming from Trump's hardline immigration policies, and worsening conditions in Central America have all contributed to the surge, they say. Biden officials argue that the Trump team inhibited their ability to get a true grasp of the situation by not fully cooperating during the transition in the months after the election. That prevented the incoming administration from getting under the hood in the time frame that other administration would have been able to. This official also bristled at the notion that they weren't fully prepared. Were we prepared? Yes, the official said. Everyone wants to be like, crisis, crisis, crisis. But it's like, you know what? Actually, things are going really well. Yes, we brought in FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, but you know what? That was a responsible thing to do. Not only was the transition truncated, but Biden officials argue they inherited an overall immigration and asylum system that has been deconstructed by Trump. As we were coming into the administration, we knew we were inheriting an absolute mess from the previous administration, that there were aspects of our legal immigration system that had been gutted, and a department that lacked the personnel to administer our laws, said Julie Chavez Rodriguez, the director of the White House's Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. The gulf between what the Trump administration did in enforced cruelty and where the Biden administration wanted to be was so great that I don't really think there was a clear example that needed to be made in how the government and the administration was going to change, one senior administration official said. And because of COVID, they had greatly reduced bed capacity. That capacity has not been enough for the increased number of children. It was foreseeable months ago that there was going to be a problem if bed capacity wasn't going to be increased, Greenberg added. The Trump policies barring people from coming to the United States also contributed to more people waiting in Mexico to come to the U.S., argued Jay Sandwig, a former senior Homeland Security official under the Obama administration. The Trump administration had pushed non-Mexican asylum seekers to Mexico until their court dates in the United States, leaving tens of thousands languishing in Mexico, and invoked a public health law during the coronavirus pandemic that allowed border officials to turn away migrants, including adults, families, and unaccompanied children encountered at the border. Biden moved to undo those, though he's still leaning on the public health law, Title number 42, to turn most adult migrants away. Republicans have turned to immigration as their primary line of attack against Biden. Democrats have responded by charging that the outgoing Trump administration is responsible for creating the conditions that led to the border problems by refusing to give the Biden administration a proper transition and with policies that led to migrants waiting in dangerous conditions in camps near the border. Democrats charge that Republicans are trying to exploit the situation for political gain, scaring voters and ignoring the fact that the migration increases are cyclical and happened in the Trump administration too. The House passed 2 immigration bills, One, to provide a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants known as Dreamers, and another to provide legal status for farm workers, though they are expected to hit a wall in the Senate. There's help on the way, but now is not the time to make the journey, an unnamed Biden official said. The situation at the border isn't going to be transformed overnight, the official explained, saying that migrants seeking to gain asylum right away need to understand that they're not going to be able to come into the United States immediately. With growing numbers of migrants gathering at the U.S. border with Mexico, the Biden administration had a simple message Sunday, this was March 21st, stay home. The U.S. is expelling families and single adults trying to enter illegally and wants to find ways for migrants to apply for refuge while in Mexico. The message is quite clear, do not come, Mayorkas said. The border is closed, the border is secure. He emphasized that the U.S. is not kicking out young, vulnerable children. The acting head of FEMA, Robert Fenton, told lawmakers on March 16th that less than 6% of COVID-19 tests for migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border have come back positive, a lower percentage than the overall positivity rate in the state of Texas. There's testing happening, Acting Administration Robert Fenton told lawmakers. What we're seeing is less than 6% positive right now coming across the border. Fenton's comments come as Texas Governor Greg Abbott and GOP lawmakers have expressed concerns that migrants are spreading the virus to the general public. However, the rate of infection among migrants tested at the border is lower than that of the state overall. As of Tuesday, March 2nd, the 7-day average of the state's positivity rate stood at 7.4%, according to Johns Hopkins University. Back on March 2nd, before all this, Texas Governor Greg Abbott says it's time to open Texas 100% and end statewide mask mandate. Public health experts say the move is risky and comes much too soon. Texans will no longer be required to wear a mask in public, and all businesses will be able to open at full capacity starting next week of March 8th, Governor Greg Abbott announced Tuesday, March 2nd. So do you understand what all happened there?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Well, the last part was all how the governor's opening up the state now. And
Prior to
what?
Prior to his now prior to his issue with the migrants coming over the border, saying the migrants are the ones spreading the disease.
Yeah, I mean they've been saying that, right?
He had already announced with Texas that there's no more mask mandate,
Right.
and all businesses are opening at full capacity.
And that was prior to them coming over, you're saying?
Well,
That's
then
what
while they're all coming over,
this going up?
Texas Governor Greg Abbott and GOP lawmakers have expressed concerns that migrants are spreading the virus to the general public.
But it said up here, the percentage was lower than the state. Its averages.
Correct.
So it wasn't that. They're just using that as an excuse because they still want to open this up and not believe that masks and distancing and all this is still helping.
Well, they don't.
Place.
Yeah, because now that the vaccine's happening, so now they're like, we're
Right.
done with the masks and all businesses.
Which again,
open at full capacity.
their city or state is starting to go on a rise of this COVID again.
Well, now they're going to blame it's the migrants.
Well, they're trying to.
Yeah.
But they've been shown that all the testing of these migrants that they're getting isn't.
They just
causing it.
disregard that, though.
I understand,
But they're saying
yeah.
if Texas numbers goes up, it's not because of the governor. It's not because they
That's
stopped
what
the
they're gonna
mask
try to do,
mandate,
yeah.
and it's not because they open businesses at full capacity. It's because of the migrants and all them coming in, because of the Biden administration, and these migrants are bringing COVID back in. We had it all under control, and now it's the migrants and Biden's fault, not the governor of Texas. It's not his fault. So I wrote, thank you Fox News, CNN, NPR, CBS News, MSN, and Dallas News for your excellent reporting. I also prayed for this situation at this time and wrote it. I said, my Lord and our Father, I pray for our border and humanity crisis and all those escaping their country's violence and poverty and destruction and the long and difficult and impoverished journey coming here to the U.S. and then having to be turned back and sent home. How devastating for them. Please give them the strength and ability to endure, my Lord, and protect their lives. I pray for our new government making such difficult choices and the strength and ability to care for so many incoming unaccompanied children, terrified and scared, with such compassion for them and grace and mercy, helping them find suitable places and family and relatives to stay at. And I hope all those children and parents separated at the border during the last administration are found and reunited again as a family. Please give our government and officials and president and all the migrants strength and ability to endure and know what to do, and to the best of their ability with your love and compassion and wisdom and grace and guidance and the truth, and have both parties work together as one for the common good, for your glory and life among us as Lord, and give our country the ability to love and understand and pray in your name, Lord Jesus, amen. So other things that surface. Facebook claims immigrants/migrants or illegal citizens get free health care. This is taken from Snopes. What happens when you cross the United States border illegally? This is as of January 16, 2018. A viral Facebook post comparing U.S. immigration policy to that of North Korea and Afghanistan gets most of the facts wrong. Claim: undocumented immigrants in the United States receive a job, a driver's license, food stamps, health care, housing, education, a tax-free business for 7 years, and child benefits. Mostly false. What's true: undocumented immigrants are entitled to public education in most parts of the U.S. What's false: undocumented immigrants are not entitled to most of the government benefits afforded to U.S. citizens, particularly when it comes to health care and housing. Far from getting a tax-free business, undocumented immigrants pay taxes, mostly without benefiting from the programs they help fund. Okay, now from PolitiFact.com fact check. Facebook post stated on January 31st, 2019, undocumented immigrants get Medicare for free. No, undocumented immigrants don't get Medicare for free. A recent Facebook post laments that senior citizens have to pay for federal health care benefits while undocumented immigrants enjoy the insurance gratis. Why do seniors on Social Security have to pay for Medicare and a supplemental insurance, and the illegals get it all for free? As a post published on the Columbian Post Facebook page on January 31st. This was again 2019. The post, which had been shared more than 14,000 times by February 26, was flagged as part of Facebook's efforts to combat false news and misinformation on its newsfeed. Read more about our partnership with Facebook. First, we wondered, what is the Columbian Post? According to its Facebook account, the Columbian Post is an American exceptionalism themed news media page that aims to promote and honor American heritage and the constitutional rights of our leaders and fans. The page also includes this disclaimer: we're a growing paper. We don't report fake news. We share opinions and news updates. They don't report fake news, but they share opinions and news updates. When we make mistakes, we correct them. Please refrain from making snap judgments which are not true at all. That's all on their thing. We wanted to ask the Post for more information about its claim that undocumented immigrants get Medicare for free, but it wasn't possible to send a message to the account on Facebook, and there's no contact information on its website. So we started researching this statement. Who is eligible for Medicare? The U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services did not directly respond to PolitiFact's query about whether the Facebook post's claim is accurate. Instead, a spokesman for the agency said that individuals who want to apply for Medicare Part A and Part B must contact Social Security, which determines the person or that person's eligibility on behalf of Medicare. According to the Social Security Administration's requirements for entitlement, they must be 65 years old, a U.S. resident, and either a citizen or a lawful permanent resident who has lived in the country continuously for the 5 years immediately preceding the month all other requirements are met. Stephen Wallace, a community health sciences professor at the University of California, Los Angeles, told PolitiFact in an email that undocumented immigrants aren't eligible for either Medicare or Social Security. You have to pay into those systems for 10 years to be eligible and need a valid Social Security number to do so, Wallace wrote. When undocumented immigrants work with a Social Security number, it is either fake or someone else's. So they pay into the system but are unable to claim benefits. Paul Van de Water, a senior fellow at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, a liberal think tank, also said the Facebook post claims were false. Social Security and Medicare benefits cannot be paid to people who are not lawfully present in the United States, among other requirements, he said in an email. Even lawfully present immigrants have to be residents for at least 5 years to qualify for Medicare benefits. Okay. ImmigrationForum.org. Fact sheet. Immigrants and public benefits. Are documented immigrants eligible for federal public benefit programs? Generally, no. Undocumented immigrants, including DACA. Do you understand what the DACA is?
I know it, but I can't remember what the abbreviations are for.
Well, you don't have to know what the abbreviations are for, but just explain what DACA is. It's the program that they have for the immigrants. I don't know how to explain it. Just tell me. Then you don't know what the DACA is.
I can't remember it.
DACA was, I think, under the Obama administration. I heard it a lot during the Obama administration. So whether he invented it or created it or passed a bill on it or it was before that and it was being challenged during his administration, that I don't know or remember. But DACA has to do with immigrant children or children of immigrants. I think it's children of immigrants. So immigrants who came here, worked here, have been living here, children born here, they're like DACA. I don't remember the DACA either, but they are documented children. They're documented legal citizens of illegal immigrants. So the whole
they were
problem
born
or
here.
Question was sending their parents back and these kids back with them. Right. And these kids are like, no, we are American citizens. We were born here. This is our land, and our illegal
But you were born here
parents,
illegally, right?
Well, their parents are illegal, came here illegally. The children are innocent. Children are always innocent. Children are like, they're just born. They're conceived and they're born.
But they're born into a family, and the family should stay together. And if the family isn't legal, they need to be put back in their country until they can become legal.
Yeah, but now a lot of these children are young adults. They were becoming 17, 18, 19, 20, so on and so forth. And now the threat was coming that we're going to send your parents back and all of their kids with them. And they're like, hold on, I am of age. Right. I am an adult. Mm-hmm. And I am now providing, I'm the one working and taking care of and providing for my parents and our family. and you can't send our parents back. They have nowhere to go. They're sick, can't work, strokes, whatever the things are. So these kids are working, paying taxes. They're your average everyday American citizen, now helping support and take care of their parents and their younger siblings who are also born here and citizens. So the whole controversy or problem was the DACA program with these illegal immigrant children who are now becoming of age and can stay, should not be sent back to. They're like, Mexico's not our country, or Guatemala or Honduras. We're born here. This is all we know.
Yeah, well,
This is all we know.
They still have to become registered. They still have to go through the process.
No, Todd, they're born here. They are.
No, they're not, because they come from illegal parents who are not registered in our system.
The children are registered.
How do they get registered?
By birth, when they're born. When they're born here, they are registered here. So they are American children. And then they go to schools, they go to colleges, they get degrees, then they go into the workforce in our country and they get jobs, and then they're paying taxes and all that stuff, and all 100% completely
So they have
legal.
social security numbers.
I'm sure they do to get jobs. And they have a legal birth certificate here.
Okay.
And they have a residence here.
I don't know enough about it to say anything.
Well, that's why I'm informing you, as I've learned all this stuff now to. This is the things that are going on. And then, of course, when we were starting to get stimulus payments, the first stimulus payments, which I think like the first one was $600 each adult American citizen, a lot of these legal children, a lot of these legal Americans living with illegal immigrants were excluded from that stimulus package.
Right, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
And they then said, why are we excluded when we're born here, we're citizens, we have a birth certificate, I'm sure they have a social security number, they've been going to school, college, graduate, working, jobs, and now they were like, we aren't going to give you a, but then they too were like out of work, can't go to work, we're not going to help you either with stimulus package.
Yeah.
And they're like, why?
Right.
Because you're illegal. No, I'm not illegal. My
Mm-hmm.
parents are. My parents aren't asking for the stimulus.
Mm-hmm.
I, who am legal, of illegal immigrants, are asking for the stimulus that I rightfully deserve. And yes, they do. So it wasn't until many months later, when the next stimulus package came around for the $1,200, that then Congress realized the error of their ways and sent these children now $1,800.
Right.
Okay, so then when these children got $1,800, all hell breaks loose on Facebook with everybody saying, oh, the illegals are getting $1,800, we only get 6?
Right. Or 12.
Well, but then we were getting 12. At the time we only got 6, and the 12 hadn't come in the mail yet. We only got 6, and now they're going to get $1,800? Now, when I investigated this, I'm like, because they didn't get the first 6, and now we're getting 12. So now they're going to get the 12 with us, and the last 6 they should have gotten before. So they've had to wait all these months more with no money, food, or whatever. Can't go back to work, pandemic. Well, we got the 6, and they got nada, which they should have gotten the 6. So now the government's trying to make up for that. So now the whole lie surfaced on Facebook from the patriots, the right-wing GOP believers, followers, whatever you want to call them, that the illegal immigrants, Pelosi and the Democrats are just sending them $1,800.
Right.
And we only got 6.
Right.
And where's our $1,200? We didn't even get that yet.
Right.
And then as I'm listening to it, I'm like, now wait, if you add that up, that's $1,800. So that means there's a 6 and a 12 coming together as one. How come and how did that work? And I look into it, I'm like, oh, that makes sense to me. Yeah, why would they be excluded on the first go round
Right.
when they are legal American citizens? They're like, we're not of Mexico or Guatemala or Honduras, Central America. We are of America.
Right.
straight all the way.
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, that's why a lot of all this other stuff surfaces and becomes this weird problem. Why this is why the Lord says, gather the truth and
Right.
know it.
Yeah.
Because all hell's breaking loose in the world. So are undocumented immigrants eligible for federal public benefit programs? Generally, no. Undocumented immigrants, including DACA holders, are ineligible to receive most federal public benefits, including means-tested benefits such as a Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP, sometimes referred to as food stamps, regular Medicaid, Supplemental Security Income, SSI, and temporary assistance for needy families, TANF. Undocumented immigrants are ineligible for health care subsidies under the Affordable Care Act and are prohibited from purchasing unsubsidized health coverage on ACA or ACA changes. Undocumented immigrants may be eligible for a handful of benefits that are deemed necessary to protect life. Okay, so yes, there are some things they're going to get to save their lives, to protect life, or guarantee safety in dire situations, such as emergency Medicaid, access to treatment in hospital emergency rooms, or access to healthcare nutrition programs under the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, WIC. So yes, so thankfully we're not a country, supposedly, that's not going to be like, too bad you're illegal, we're just going to watch you suffer and wither up and die on the street. But I think some people would rather they do that than to give them a penny or $1 or 10,000 or $1 million to that particular program to help these people who are escaping their countries for legitimate reasons and are going to try to make a life here, just like all of us who came from immigrant parents coming to America, this new land, to make a life for themselves because of the tyranny the tyranny that was going on in the country that we immigrated from. All right. Are legal immigrants eligible for federal public benefit programs? Only those with lawful permanent residence status, but not until they have resided as a legal resident for 5 years. So there is a 5-year stipulation.
Yeah, you read that already.
So LPRs, lawful permanent resident. LPRs, sometimes referred to as green card holders, do not have full access to all public benefit programs and are subject to limitations before being eligible for federal means-tested benefits, including Medicaid, the Children's Health Insurance Program, which is CHIP, TANF, SNAP, and SSI. Such limitations include the 5-year bar, which requires the individual to have maintained LPR status in the U.S. for 5 years before being eligible for benefits. However, under some federal benefit programs, this requirement can be bypassed when the recipient has worked 40 quarters under a visa. Quarters worked by parents when the immigrant was a dependent child or by a spouse while married to the immigrant count towards the immigrant's 40 quarters. LPRs are eligible to apply for Medicare and public/Section 8 housing as well, as long as the 5-year bar is fulfilled. For LPRs to become eligible for Social Security benefits for both retirement and disability, they are required to have completed 40 quarters of work in addition to having maintained LPR status for 5 years. Certain additional categories of immigrants, specifically refugees, asylum seekers, and victims of human trafficking or domestic violence, have the same eligibility requirements for federal benefits as LPRs. Individuals on non-immigrant and temporary visa holders are ineligible for benefits. So a lot of these people are going to come over here and be like, we got to wait 5 years. We got to make it we made it this far. Now we got to wait and make it for another 5 years.
Right.
Hoy. Are immigrants eligible for state benefit programs? In some states, yes. 26 states make immigrants eligible for state-funded benefit programs. Most of these states either offer assistance to families or provide access to health care to otherwise uninsured immigrants. Examples of these programs are New York Safety Net Assistance, California's CalFresh Food Assistance Program, and California's Cash Assistance Program for Immigrants, CAPI. What is a protocol for mixed status family, i.e., undocumented parents with citizen children?
Right.
Like any U.S. born citizen, U.S. citizen children of undocumented parents can receive federal benefits if they meet eligibility requirements without penalty. Similarly, the child's eligibility oh my goodness. Similarly, the child's eligibility does not change their parents or any other family members' eligibility for that benefit. How much do legal immigrants use federal public benefit programs? Legal immigrants use federal public benefit programs at lower rates than U.S. born citizens. As recently as 2013, the rate at which non-citizens have used public benefit programs was less than that of U.S. born citizens. For example, 32.5% of native-born citizen adults receive SNAP benefits compared to 25.4% of naturalized citizen adults and 29% of non-citizen adults. In addition to immigrants' lower rate of SNAP usage, they also receive lower benefit values, costing the program less. How much do immigrants contribute to support public benefit programs? Both documented and undocumented immigrants pay more into public benefit programs than they take out. According to Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, undocumented immigrants contribute an estimated $11.74 billion to state and local economies each year. However, undocumented immigrants are not eligible for many of the federal or state benefits that their tax dollars help fund. Additionally, a few states have completed studies demonstrating that immigrants pay more in taxes than they receive in government services and benefits. A study in Arizona found that the state's immigrants generate $2.4 billion in tax revenue per year, which more than offsets the $1.4 billion in their use of benefit programs. Another study in Florida estimated that on a per capita basis, immigrants in the state paid nearly $1,500 more in taxes per capita than they receive in public benefits. Okay, do undocumented children have access to a public education? Yes. In accordance with the Supreme Court ruling in Plyer v. Doe, all immigrant children, regardless of status, have access to a public education and are eligible to attend public schools for grades K through 12. Undocumented immigrants are also eligible for the Head Start program, as it is not considered a federal public benefit program. Any child who is otherwise eligible, regardless of their or their parents' immigration status, may enroll in Head Start or Early Head Start. This was from immigrationforum.org. All this last stuff I read was from immigrationforum.org.
Okay.
How you doing?
Go ahead.
On March 24th, President Biden is placing Kamala Harris in charge of addressing the substantial uptick in migrants, including unaccompanied children flocking to the U.S.-Mexico border, handing a major political risk to his vice president. I felt that was a pretty good move.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with all this going on,
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a very wise move. Put her in charge of this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's got enough on his plate.
Mm-hmm.
He can monitor it and oversee everything, but put her in charge of it.
Well, plus she's got the immigrant background,
But that's true.
so it's like she fits right in.
Yeah. So when I heard that, I was like, wow, that. I thanked my Lord and our Father's wisdom for that. So parentheses. Quote, as Vice President Biden was dispatched by then President Barack Obama to address an increase in the arrival of Central American children at the U.S.-Mexico border, or what Biden at the time called a dangerous surge of migration, now, as the White House faces a renewed uptick in the number of unaccompanied minors seeking asylum, Biden is giving Harris a similar role.
Yeah.
Okay, this increase has been consequential, the president said. I can think of nobody who is better qualified than this woman who led the second biggest attorney general's office in America, referring to her time as California's attorney general. For her part, the new migration czar said, there's no question that this is a challenging situation, adding, while we are clear that people should not come to the border now, we also understand that we will enforce the law. Both leaders said their administration will attempt to help the Central American countries from which migrants are coming deal with the problems there. Biden criticized the Trump administration for opting against using a $700 million federal program designed to help Northern Triangle countries. The best way to keep them from coming is to keep them from wanting to leave, Biden said, citing as drivers of migration natural disasters in addition to cartel violence. Vice President Harris will be aided by Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, with whom she began meeting for regular private lunches soon after taking office, and the Administrator for Internal Development, Gloria Steele. Harris began her new role on Wednesday, just recent here, speaking with the Triangle Special Envoy Ricardo Zenega and members of a delegation traveling in Mexico. The Vice President understands well that there are many factors that are leading children and families to leave their homes and take the treacherous journey to arrive at our border, a senior official said. This includes economic instability, violence, corruption, and most recently, extreme weather incidents like the 2 hurricanes at the end of last year. It's going to be secure borders for the United States, but also for the countries of the region, another senior official said. Our border is not open, and those countries don't want open borders either. They want to have it regulated. They want to have good order. So obviously there's a lot of forces driving these people up here.
Yeah.
I mean, between the violence and cartel gangs in their own countries, 2 major hurricanes, they're suffering poverty, they're suffering turmoil, obvious huge tribulation. They're willing to take the chance and the risk to come here. They knew with Biden and all of his anti-immigration policies and wall that they would not get in. Many tried. They were all sent back to Mexico. Now that Trump's out, Biden's in, they're like, now's the time.
Right.
So I have understanding of what's going on here.
Yeah.
The Vice President will also work with regional leaders on, getting back to Kamala Harris, the Vice President will also work with regional leaders on making it safer for people to stay at home to access asylum in the region, to access legal pathways if the administration is working hard to stand up, said another senior aide. To do this, the administration intends to quickly surge humanitarian assistance to help with navigate the legal pathways. The White House touted Harris's time as California's chief law enforcement official, where she fought organized crime as the state's attorney general and later as a senator, in preparing her for the task. Officials would not detail plans for Harris to travel to the region, but they said that the vice president would hold phone calls and virtual meetings. Harris had hoped to accompany a delegation traveling in the region now, but was unable to, the White House said. Okay, so now this pops up on Facebook. MSN reported, Kamala Harris laughs off question about visiting border, sparking torrent of GOP criticism. 1 New York Times Vice President Kamala Harris was seen laughing when a reporter asked if she was planning a trip to the border as the Biden administration faces a humanitarian crisis. Not today, Harris responded when asked if she had plans to visit the border while speaking with journalists outside Air Force 2 in Florida on Monday, March 22nd. She then laughed and said, "I have before, and I'm sure I will again." Okay, so Steve Scalise, a U.S. House of Representatives Minority Whip and Republican representative for LA, tweeted on the 23rd, "Watch. Kamala Harris laughs at a reporter who asked her if she has plans to visit the border. Don't believe this administration when they say they are serious about solving the crisis." End quote. A Twitter response countered, saying, "The GOP is changing to a hateful narrative to take away from the fact that they are complicit in the January 6th insurrection, voted against getting children out of poverty, against affordable health care, against workers making livable wages." Now, Kevin McCarthy, GOP leader, tweeted, quote, while VP Harris laughs off a humanitarian crisis of epic proportions, Republicans are focused on securing the border and responding to the needs of our Border Patrol agents on the front lines. So did you hear? While Vice President Harris laughs off a humanitarian crisis of epic proportions, Republicans are focused on securing the border and responding to the needs of our Border Patrol agents on the front lines. End quote. A Twitter response countered and said, Republicans are only happy when everyone who isn't making people rich. Republicans are only happy when everyone who isn't making rich people richer and brown and black people are treated with cruelty and suffering. VP Harris smiles and laughs because she is a happy person, not co-signing the suffering of children. You know who laughs at others? ? End quote. And another said, quote, an epic humanitarian crisis, more than 500,000 Americans are dead due to the inept corruption of the Trump administration lying about a deadly pandemic, end quote. Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, Republican representative Arizona, tweeted, quote, first, the Biden administration refused to admit the situation at the border is a crisis. Now, all caps, Kamala Harris thinks this is a laughing matter. It isn't a laughing matter for the border communities being deluged by illegal immigrants, end quote. A Twitter response countered and said, all caps, Debbie Lesko voted not to allow Arizona's electoral college votes. So now I commented here, the video tweet, because I watched the video tweet. So the video tweet of Kamala Harris laughing when asked by a reporter on the tarmac if she tends to visit the border was simply what I saw, her thinking about the question, seeing her busy schedule and impossibility of being in two places at once, either the White House or country meetings and diplomats and officials planning and scheduling and coordinating for the border or visiting the border, and simply saying, not today, and laughing because of the impossibility and busyness of her schedule and not able to be in two places at once and overwhelmed, but up for the task, and said, I have before and I'm sure I will again. Yeah. And then she went on to the next reporter. And it wasn't like a sinister laughing or anything like that. It was just kind of like, it's kind of like that, like, not today. Because it's like, I could tell she's like, I got a whole lot of work to do. Not today. That's all I saw it was.
Sure.
So, for PBS NewsHour broadcasted, President Biden saying, this new surge we're dealing with now started with the last administration, but it's our responsibility to deal with it humanely and to stop what's happening. Yamiche Alcindor reported saying, he also announced Vice President Kamala Harris will be leading the administration efforts to deal with Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras on immigration. So they're trying to get down there to where the problem is stemming from that's causing all of them to come up here.
Right.
It's a new, this is Yamisha Sendor still. It's a new role Harris embraced. Vice President Kamala Harris said, while we are clear people should not come to the border, we also understand we will enforce the law and that we also must address the root causes. Yamisha Sendor reported saying, officials from the Vice President's office said she will focus on two main issues, stemming the flow of irregular migrants to the U.S. and establishing partnerships with the Central American nations they are fleeing. But the role is a hard one with complex issues dating back decades. And it's one Mr. Biden himself tried to tackle while he was vice president. In the meantime, the president and vice president also met with the secretaries of Health and Human Services and Homeland Security, and President Biden dispatched a delegation of White House officials and members of Congress to inspect a refugee settlement facility in Carrizo Springs, Texas. MSN continued to say, the pushback comes as local leaders in states along the southern border have decided the Biden administration's immigration policies, demanding more transparency and the activation of forces such as the National Guard to help with the surge. The Biden administration has been an abject failure when it comes to ensuring the safety of unaccompanied minors who cross our border, Texas Governor Greg Abbott said. President Biden's refusal to address the border crisis is not only enabling criminal actors like human traffickers and smugglers, but is exposing innocent, unaccompanied children to illness and potentially unsafe living conditions. Now, it's like this. Where else are they going to go? So, like you and I were talking about last night, and they keep saying, oh my gosh, the inhumane living conditions they have them in at the border, it's horrible, and they're all crowded and overcrowded. And every time they show stuff, it's like they're not piled on top of each other.
Right.
There's less beds than normal because of the COVID. They're trying to keep social distancing, but it's impossible with thousands coming. And they have them all masked as much as they can. They're running all the tests. They're getting food and water. They're getting them blankets and shelter, trying to shelter them. So from what they've gone through, either in these camps in Mexico or traveling in open air, vulnerable to all the conditions and environment from Central America to the United States, this is probably a safe haven for them.
Sure.
But now these GOP senators and Republicans are trying to make it as a humanitarian crisis,
Sure.
and that there's overcrowding.
Yep. Making it look worse than it is.
And then they're susceptible to human traffickers and smugglers, exposing innocent, unaccompanied children to illness and potentially unsafe living conditions. It's like, where they've been living all this time before.
Right.
Now they're actually getting clean water, clean food. They're trying to get them shelter. They're getting checked by doctors. So anyway, White House officials, however, have said the influx of migrants is not a crisis. Children presenting at our border who are fleeing violence, who are fleeing prosecution, who are fleeing terrible situations is not a crisis, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki told reporters. Thank you, MSN and others, for your reports on this humanitarian effort at our border. Want to keep going? We're almost done.
Yep.
The White House also intends to reinstate a $700 million program established under Biden during the last Democratic administration. Okay, so going back to the Obama era, Biden has touted his role in the Alliance for Prosperity, a 2014 program that drawn up amid an upswing in the number of unaccompanied Central American minors seeking asylum at the southern border. In a subsequent op-ed, Biden referred to the increase as a dangerous surge of migration and called for the United States to help bring about economic and political reforms in the region. In an interview Wednesday, March 24th, Harris called the current crisis a huge problem as the administration struggles to accommodate the vast number of unaccompanied migrant children seeking asylum. I'm not going to pretend it's not, Harris said during an interview with CBS this morning. Are we looking at overcrowding at the border, in particular these kids? Yes. Children apprehended at the southern border have been held in Border Patrol custody past the legal 3-day detention limit. before transitioning to longer-term facilities, drawing outcry from the public and lawmakers. Harris accepted a new role with a smile, despite the risks to her future political ambitions becoming president, saying to her boss, "Thank you, Mr. President." So they're on the job. They're scrambling to take care of this situation while telling all of them, "Don't come yet.
Right.
We need more time," but they're still coming.
Right.
And they're like, "We're coming." So, PBS NewsHour reported on March 22nd, amid an influx of immigration children arriving at the southern border, new images have surfaced from inside the overcrowded facilities on the U.S. side. The Biden administration on Monday sent officials to Mexico to discuss efforts to stem migration north. Amna Nawaz reports on the reasons behind the problem, which starts much farther south, Amna Nawaz said. Amid an influx of immigrant children coming to the southern border, new images have surfaced from inside the overcrowded border facilities on the U.S. side. These photos provided to PBS NewsHour by Congressman Henry Cuellar of Texas shows adults and children bunched together on sleeping mats at a makeshift tent facility in Donna, Texas, operated by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. It comes amid an outcry from a bipartisan group of U.S. senators after they toured a border facility last Friday with Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Press were barred from the trip. Mayorkas told ABC News yesterday the Biden administration is working to move children out of temporary border facilities as quickly as possible. He added one final message for immigrants hoping to journey north now. Alejandro Mayorkas, quote, "Now is not the time to come. Do not come. This journey is dangerous. We are building safe, orderly, and humane ways to address the needs of vulnerable children." So now the public, the news press is trying to get in and film all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Biden administration is trying to keep them out. Any idea why?
Well, he doesn't want to create a hysteria, and the way people misinterpret and the way they're doing all this stuff. And, you view that it doesn't look like it's, it looks crowded, it looks all that, but like you said, it's a much better situation than what they come from. And it's just temporary until they can get it figured out. So
Right.
It's like a holding spot.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a big deal, but everybody makes it one.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And they are scrambling to set up more camps, more
Yeah.
shelter, and while they're doing that and trying to also fingerprint, process, document all these people
Sure.
that are coming in by the droves,
Right.
that's a challenging task.
Yeah.
So I can understand, keep the press out of here for right now,
Right.
because we're doing everything we can. Plus we got COVID we're still testing for. Biden is still working to get vaccines out across the country and enough of them and monitor all that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think they're keeping the press out because, we have all this stuff to hide and we're being cruel.
No,
and
they just need
these
to
children are,
They just need to chill out for a little bit.
yeah.
Give us some time to get it worked out,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll share everything with you.
And it's like Biden is reporting on it. Harris is reporting on it.
Yeah.
Alejandro Mayorkas is reporting on it. Other officials are reporting on it. So it's not like everything's kept secret. There's no reports coming out. Now the press will be like, well, you're just telling us what we want to hear. It could be really bad. But they're
Right.
saying, no, it's crowded. It's crowded, but we're doing the best we can. And others that are in there saying, the Biden administration is doing the best they can right now. It's going to take some time.
Right.
Just like, oh my goodness, these poor people. So the Biden administration today sent officials to Mexico to meet with Mexican officials about efforts to stem migration north. That's the other thing. So they're trying to meet with Mexican officials and Guatemala, Honduras,
Right.
all those in Central America. So Kamala Harris is now in charge of, so they're like, are you going to go visit the border? And not today.
Right.
She's going to meet with all these officials, all these delegates. She's got to try to scramble fast to work out we all need to work together. We need to coordinate. We need to come up with a plan. We need to work and enforce this to stop this migration or slow it down until we're ready. So that's what she's got to do.
Yeah.
But the truth is the problems start much further south. I have to tell you, the vast majority of people we met with today this is still Amna Nawaz speaking. So she said, but the truth is, she's talking to Judy Woodruff on PBS News. But the truth is the problem start much further south. I have to tell you, the vast majority of people we met with today are coming from those 3 Central American countries of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. And we should also mention the numbers of people crossing the U.S. southern border has been increasing since May of last year. That was the Trump administration. That's something we don't talk about a lot. It did increase dramatically in the fall, and of course here we are hitting these 20-year highs with over 100,000 people crossing in February, but it's important to note too, the vast majority of people crossing the border, over 80%, are single adults, and the vast majority of people crossing that border are still being almost immediately expelled. That includes families. We, in fact, crossed over into Mexico today to a town called Reynosa, where many of these migrant families are now sort of sheltering after recently being expelled by the Biden administration. So right there, where many of these migrant families are now sort of sheltering, that's why it's like if they make it across and they're all taking shifts within our shelters, even if they have to take shifts or if they're crowded in those shelters, they're given shelter. Now they're being sent back and they're trying to sort of now shelter. They said they crossed within a matter of hours. In some cases they were fingerprinted, photographed, and then walked right back across the bridge, the border, crossing into Mexico. In some cases they didn't know they were being sent back to Mexico until they were dropped off. I don't know if she's referring to those from last summer and fall, or now. She said, we met with a lawyer who actually works with some of these families. Her name is Jennifer Harbury. She works with a group called Lawyers for Good Government. A group called Lawyers for Good Government. And here's what she told us about some of the migrant families we met sheltering in one particular park. Jennifer Harbury said, almost all these people are Central American families with children, including small children, who tried to cross and were sent back under the COVID rules. They were just dumped at the foot of the bridge. And now they have been forced to stay over here close to the foot of the bridge. Judy Woodruff says, and Amna, as you say, the vast majority of people are being sent back, but unaccompanied children are allowed to stay. How much is that taxing the system? Okay, so it is a lot of these people are being just sent back.
Right.
And being dropped off at the foot of the bridge. Yeah. So wherever they're sheltering.
About that, yeah.
Okay, so so Judy asked Amna, how much is that taxing the system? Amna said, oh, incredibly, Judy. I mean, we have been seeing this in the reports. We have been reporting this ourselves. Our system is not meant to handle this many unaccompanied children. And those numbers have been increasing. We now know that backup, the fact that the shelters that house these children, they're supposed to be transferred to working under reduced capacity in the pandemic. There's a backup now in the Border Patrol facilities where children are not meant to be staying. We now know over 3,000 of the thousands of children in Border Patrol facilities have been held there for longer than 72 hours. 72 hours is a legal limit. They're supposed to be there. We also know over 800 have been held in those facilities for more than 10 days because of the backup. So the other thing is a lot of these GOP Republicans are screaming and yelling, and Democrats are concerned too about they're being held longer than 72 hours.
Right.
But they're like, we're backed up. Right. We're doing the best
more money, get some
we
more help.
can. It's like, you gotta get them out of there. We only have so much manpower.
Well, and they're trying
and
to,
they're coming more
they're
by the
trying to
drones
send
daily.
they're trying to send them back, but they can't get rid of them all either that way either.
Well, but again, they have to document them,
Right.
fingerprint. That takes time.
Yeah.
They're back, and we got more coming in than we can keep up with, so there's a backup.
Right.
Wow. Now, one of the things I should point out is, with some of these migrant families we spoke to who've been recently expelled, they now feel they have to make a tough choice. Many of them were asking, should I send my child alone? Would he or she have a better chance of making their way into the United States? Some of them as young as 8 or 9 or 10 years old, if I allowed them to go alone. We actually met one woman, a mother named Ada Rosa, who left Honduras. She says fleeing unspeakable violence. Her 27-year-old son had been murdered in front of her. Her 14-year-old son had also witnessed the crime, but they said they don't trust the authorities to report it to them. So they made their way to the U.S., to the southern border, spent their life savings, have survived, and seen unspeakable scenes, and they were immediately expelled back into Mexico. Here's what Ada Rosa told us about how she perceived she was treated by U.S. officials. Ada Rosa, Honduran migrant through translator. I was looking for protection, but they didn't help me. It didn't matter to them that my son was killed. They didn't care that he was killed. They turned me back. I don't have any money, and I haven't eaten. So this is the other problem they're having to deal with.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, you've got that times thousands, and you have to then make all these, and then quickly, hurry up. And Biden administration is failing miserably with this border surge, crisis, pandemic, whatever.
Easy to blame them. Yep.
Easy to sit and judge.
Yep.
So Judy Woodruff's so hard to hear that, Amna. We know the Biden administration has said over and over again, don't come. Now is not the time to come. Is that message getting across at all? Amna said, Judy, from the families we spoke to, it is not. I asked a group of those migrant families we spoke to, have any of you heard President Biden say the border is closed? Not a single person raised his or her hand. So I asked them, what have you heard? Because many of them began their journeys 3, 4, in some cases 5 or 6 months ago. And that was all under the Biden administration. And they said, we heard when President Biden is in office, there will be no deportations. It will be easier for young children to enter, and quite frankly, the people who are in the business of moving people, that is the smugglers and the traffickers, who are incentivized to move as many people as they can, they have been helping to amplify this message. Right. Now is the time to come. So that's what they've been saying. You pay us, we'll help you get into the United States. Now is the time to come. You pay me, I'll help you.
Everybody's trying to make out here.
So these families are spending thousands of dollars and risking their lives to make their journey. The message that Biden administration wants to deliver is not landing in these communities. Thank you, PBS NewsHour, MSN, and Washington Examiner for your research, journalism, and excellent reporting. And then this last little bit. Biden promised change at the border. He kept Trump's Title 42 policy to close it and cut off asylum, end quote. In March 2020, the Trump administration put into place one of the most controversial and restrictive immigration policies ever implemented at the U.S. border. So a year ago this month.
Okay.
And in January, President Biden quietly continued it. So a year ago this month was when we started all the restrictions, the COVID restrictions and lockdowns.
Right.
So they created a thing called Title 42, established that law at the border. We can't be letting all these people in because it's like the border's closed because of this pandemic.
Right.
So that was all starting a year ago this month.
Okay.
Now, a year later this month, we're having all these people now surging at the border.
Okay, time's up.
I know. We can't wait any longer. We're coming in.
Yeah.
So And in January, President Biden quietly continued it. So he's continuing this Title 42 to still stave off or curve off this COVID pandemic.
Right.
The Biden administration says the Trump-era policy known as Title 42, which relies on a 1944 I don't know why they didn't title it 44. It's like 42.
Maybe it started in 42.
No, maybe it's section of the wall. Or I don't know.
Okay.
So, which relies on a 1944 public health statute to indefinitely close the border to non-essential travel, remains necessary to limit the spread of the coronavirus. At the same time, Biden officials say migrants at the southern border still can seek protection in the United States, a right afforded to them under U.S. law. Yet since March 20th, 2020, when the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued its order invoking Title 42, U.S. border officials have claimed unchecked unilateral authority to can you say that word? Summarily? Summarily?
Summarily? I don't know if that's the correct way.
That's how they have it. Unilateral authority to summarily expel from the country hundreds of thousands of immigrant adults, families, and unaccompanied minors who didn't have prior permission to enter without due process or access to asylum, let alone testing for the coronavirus. In a year of Title 42, of more than 650,000 encounters with migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border, fewer than 1% have been able to seek protection, the Los Angeles Times has learned. The Biden administration is trying to strike a difficult balance in the face of intensifying criticism that it is either pulling back on promises to undo the moral and national shame of the previous administration, as the president put it, or is losing control amid rising numbers at the border, wary of both the political optics and the humanitarian cost. As Republican critics decry a crisis at the border, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said in a lengthy statement that with the United States on pace to encounter more migrants on the southern border this year than in any of the last 20 years, the Biden administration is relying heavily on Title 42 to expel most of them. Still, Mayorkas framed Biden's approach as more humane, quoting one of the president's first executive orders: "Securing our borders does not require us to ignore the humanity of those who seek to cross them," he said. "We are both a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants. That is one of our proudest traditions." Thank you, Los Angeles Times, for your research, journalism, and excellent reporting. And thank you, my Lord and our God, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Yeah, well, hopefully this all works out. I mean, it's got to. It just, it's again, everybody, the media and everybody they're just pouncing on any little thing they can to exaggerate it, make it worse than it is, create this animosity between the parties. I heard just the other day that, is there even going to be a Republican Party in this next election? It's getting to be so bad. And it's like we're separating and becoming so divided in this country.
Yeah, well, what do you mean, is there even going to be a Republican Party? Because there's a Republican Party, but then there's Trump's Republican Party.
Right, and this Republican Party is falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
They're fighting within themselves and trying to figure out what the heck they're doing and who they're supposed to be anymore. And then you've got McConnell, who doesn't even know what to do as a leader of that group. He just seems to be wishy-washy all over the place. It's just getting to be pathetic.
He knows what to do according to the politics within all that, but it is wishy-washy and favoritism of his seat and power and position. But I did see in the news just the other day that it said in about 2 to 3 months, was it? Did it say 2 to 3 months? Trump will be back on social media again because he's having his own social media platform created, and it should be up and running in about 2 to 3 months. So even though he's been banned,
Do not get on that one.
I don't want anything to do with social media.
Okay.
Anyway, it's just I'm giving you a heads up on that. So if you start to hear things coming up about that,
Well, maybe
he's
it'll-
working to have his own.
Yeah.
He did say when he was banned that he's going to work
Yeah.
to have his own social
I know.
media platform built.
Maybe it'll be just as positive and forthcoming as his medical plan for everybody. It's coming. It's coming. We still haven't seen it 4 years later, so maybe it'll be that kind of thing. Hopefully.
Yeah, or his environmental plan too.
Yeah.
I'm all
of
for
his-
clean water,
all
and
of his plans.
let's just plant a bunch of trees, and that ought
And
to do
everybody
it.
and all the Republicans that are on his side, he's the only president that's done everything he said he's going to do. It's like, really? I didn't see anything he did. You know, he did stuff.
Well, he
globally.
did for the rich.
Yeah.
He did for the wealthy. He cut taxes,
And then he opened up restrictions on businesses and things like that. And
which is the very thing that they were fighting to have those restrictions to protect our environment.
Right.
Where then he said, "I'm like the most environmental caring or concerned
He
president than
was
ever. I'm all for clean water, clean
Yes.
air." And so then he sends out a delegation to plant a whole bunch of trees while trying to still find a way to open coal mines
yeah,
and remove the pollutant restrictions off of manufacturers and
Mr. Trump
industrial
was
businesses.
all for everything that could benefit him in any which way. That's
Not
what he
just
was for.
him.
Oh yeah,
I mean, obviously him as a president,
yeah,
but to benefit also all the working Americans and the wealthy, but so that everybody will have a job, no matter the risk to your health. I mean, that's down low on the totem pole. We just hope you survive the coal mine and you have a job and you can feed your family even though you have black lung disease and died of cancer. It's that concept. So sorry you died of cancer, and we'll pay our tributes at your grave.
yeah,
But our biggest goal is we need to have a lot of jobs and make a lot of money.
yeah.
So it's like, why can't we have jobs, make money, and consider our health and well-being in the process,
Right.
not sacrifice one for the other?
Right, that'd be good.